technical implementations. So see, one thing is there in the rules, they only mention reasonable security measures that you need to do it. Okay. So what exactly is the reasonable security measures? Many of them, see, what applies to reasonable security measures need not be the same because it is industry specific. Okay. See, some of the security safeguards you can probably look at is encryption, access control, incident response. Okay, these are the some of the reasonable security measures you can probably take. Okay, so and then comes to data breach notification. See, one thing is there, whenever we talk about data breach notification, see, there are basically three what you call loopholes in this in general. See, one is, how can a data breach happen? One is through an employee. Okay, this can happen. Somebody sharing it on an email, or somebody taking it on a WhatsApp, or sharing it with somebody. Second one is in case of an what do you call hacking or phishing. Okay, this can happen. Third one is basically, say suppose you are using some processor or third party vendor. Okay, whom you don't have access to, or whom you don't have any control. They don't have any cyber security measures and other things. Okay, so based on these, okay, this majoritarily this can happen, the data breach. Okay, so whenever there's a data breach happens, so then as per the rules, they're telling you have to notify in 72 hours, one to the data principal and then data protection board, and also we have certain. Okay, so these things, so within 72 hours there should be a report to be sent. So currently, I mean, the overall thing is, in the industry they're telling it is little see, when you compare with the GDPR, for example, when there's a data breach notification, they're telling if it is a significant data breach, then you can notify. If it is a small data breach, it need not be notified. But however, the understanding as per the DPDPA is, even a single PIA or something small is done, small breach has happened, till you have to notify. So there's a huge burden on the company to do the data breach notification, and then uh, anybody who is technically sound, I'm sure you understand how difficult it is to track and see where it has gone wrong under the things. Okay, so they're expecting to close it in 72 hours. But there will be some provisions, I'm sure. You can go back to the board and say you would need more time, kind of a thing, to come out because of this so and so reasons, kind of a thing. That is quite possible. Okay, that is one. So then there is something called as data retention. Okay, so for whatever purpose, maybe for your GST purpose, income tax purpose, whatever XYZ purpose, you can still retain the data as long as it is required. The moment it is complete, okay, the purpose, so you might have to delete the data. Okay, retention is not required, kind of a thing, at that point of time. And then how do you do that? You need to use some secure disposal methods. So it would be shift delete. Okay. No, that's what we know as per the email and other thing. How technically you can implement, I'm sure you guys know. It's not about your, maybe you've taken a backup or wherever. So it has to be deleted from all across, but just your main system. Maybe a backup and other things also has to be deleted. So going to the compliance roadmap. Okay. So in general, so these are the, you can say there are 4 phases, you can say. So first phase would be 1 to 2 months would be typically assessment, that is gap assessment, then data inventory creation, gap analysis, etc. Then phase 2 would be planning, 2 to 3 months. So you are trying to develop a policy process. Okay. Then implementation, deployment of technical controls, training and awareness to your employees. And then finally monitoring. So continuous audits and incident management. So this is how we typically look at from a compliance roadmap. So then whenever there's a dispute, we are referring to, no? How do we resolve the disputes under DPDPA? So one, we have a grievance redressal mechanism, and then we have one more ADR. So let's only concentrate on the grievance redressal. Okay, if there is any issue, you being a data principal, you can go to that company. They would have given you some email ID, for example, DPO at or privacy at or compliance officer at whatever XYZ. So you can send an email. If they don't respond and if you're not happy, then you can go ahead and file a complaint with the data protection board. So whatever the data protection board is able to come to a conclusion or some issue an order, if you're not still happy, you can go to the TDSAT. There's an appellate tribunal, telecom disputes appellate tribunal. Okay, so you can appeal them. You can go and if you're still not happy, then you can go and finally appeal to the Supreme Court. So this is how it would look like. Okay, in general. So what are the stakes here? So one is what you call the penalty is huge. Okay, 250 crores up to. Okay, yeah, it is up to. Read it as up. Yeah. Okay, so approximately about 30 million. So failure to safeguards to take reasonable security safeguards to prevent personal data breach. See, one thing, if at all, if anything ends up in the data protection board, definitely they would call you as a company. They would ask you to show documents and other things, how exactly it would be dealt. Okay. So then, if you don't have a process, if you don't have a policies, if you don't have a TPO, for example, if required. So if you don't have a database notification guidelines or some process, okay. So this one is you need to make all the evidence kind of a thing you need to keep so that can show what are the things that you have done. So see, one thing is for sure. Sorry, I'm not making any statement in general. It's basically no system is fail proof. There are instances where it can be taken over or it can be what you call compromised to some extent. I'm not telling to the larger extent, whatever it could be. So at that point of time, the only thing that can save you is if you have done the process and other things, policies in place. At least you can tell the board that you have done this much so that your penalty should not be 250 crores. It could be 10 crores, 20 crores. And then on top of it, if you have taken a cyber insurance, for example, then it could also help you. Okay. So that you can mitigate that risk. So one is the general risk mitigation for a compliance is to ensure you put the policy process and technical controls in place. And also at the same time, you can have a cyber insurance. That is one of the key aspect. And then up to 200 crores would be failure to notify Data Protection Board of India and data principal in case of a data breach. Whenever there's a data breach, if you don't notify, then it is up to 200 crores. And then non-fulfillment of additional obligations in related to personal data, processing of personal data, children. So there it could be 200 crores. Okay, then non-fulfillment of additional compliance, additional obligations by significant data fiduciary, it could be 150 crores. Then as a data principal like you and me, if we don't give them the right email ID or mobile number, then if at all they found, we could be fined up to 10,000 rupees for each instance. And then up to 50 crores. So whatever is not mentioned in this, okay, so then it can attract 50 crores. It's called residuary penalty. So whatever is not listed here, if it falls under that, then it could be 50 crores. Yeah, this video. Yeah, what would be enforcement process would be one is they'll receive a complaint, they will do the investigation, they'll give a show cause notice to both the parties, principal and this one. So hearing would be made, and then a penalty determination would be done. Okay, based on the evidence. So then let's look at some of the technical specifications. So maybe what do you call? You can use hash 256 for example, or TLS 1.3. Then in terms of the access control, you can use multi-factor authentication, right? So this is very common nowadays. Okay, then role-based control. So if it is an executive, you only give access to them to whatever is required. You don't have to give to everything. If they're a manager, probably you can give an access to. So basically, these things has to be looked up. Then audit logging. So logging user activity, system events, all those things should be managed from a technical perspective. These are the some technical things you can do. So then case studies. So banking sector, for example. So one is, as we know, there is a huge focus on consent, notice and consent, right? Once you have ensured that you have given a proper consent notice, then you can take a consent. So once you take a consent, what you have to do is you have to maintain that consent. There are so many consent managers available today. So you can probably switch to them and manage that logs and whatever for what consent you are taken. All those things you can keep a record of this, because end of the day, whenever there's a dispute, you need to showcase that evidence and other things. And then enhanced security, 99.9 consent accuracy. So these are some of the things based on the industry that you need to be at the top. Okay, if you want to achieve 99.9%, so definitely it is not possible on a Excel or any other small application. So you need to use a specialized compliance application. Maybe Assurtiv and other people can help you. Okay, on this. And then healthcare sector wise, centralized consent management. Okay, it can reduce compliance cost by 40%. Okay. Then e-commerce sector case study. So vendor compliance portal. So these are things where it can go wrong, right? As a banking sector, if you don't take the consent properly, then it's a huge mess. Okay. As a healthcare, you might have to do a centralized consent management. Say suppose if you have 10 hospitals, so you have to have a central consent management. You cannot have for each hospital kind of a thing, for example. Then as an e-commerce, where they can go wrong is because end of the day, they are processing multiple orders kind of a thing. But end of the day, they are also dependent on the vendors to fulfill the uh, completion, right? That means somebody will be doing a payment processing, somebody is doing a as a reseller, they're shipping the products, and then finally somebody is delivering. So there are too many vendors associated with that. As an e-commerce company, more than employees, they're also dependent on the vendors to fulfill the shipment. So there could be an issue. So they need to ensure all those things. Yeah, I think we discussed this. Okay, so then compliance roadmap is basically your assessment phase would be more or less data inventory, gap analysis, planning phase, which includes policy, process, tech evaluation. Then implementation phase, we discuss some technical controls training you can do. Then monitoring, ongoing audits, updates, etc. Okay. So then how do we approach? Is basically once you start data discovery, then you do a privacy gap assessment, review your third party risk management, contract policy and review and other things. And you can add so many other things.